For quite some time now, I've been really interested in the idea that life is suffering. I first heard about this idea from Jordan Peterson, and after that I expanded a bit into the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, nihilism, and biblical stories. And it's weird, as all my life I was sure that you should aim for happiness, whatever that would be, and you should reach a point in your life when you can easily get out of the bed in the morning and be full of joy for life. But as I discovered, that's not the reality. As I mentioned, I learned the idea that life is suffering from Jordan Peterson, and what I think he means by that is, well, life is a tragedy, it's full of pain, disappointment, and resistance, but that the suffering should be minimized by voluntarily choosing and accepting that suffering in order to strive to achieve something meaningful. I'll go over what meaning is later, but I want to talk about the statement of life is suffering and my interpretation of it. So, one way you can look at it is that life only happens when you suffer for a reasonable meaning. When you take leisure time, you are in comfort, and therefore you are not improving, you are not striving for a particular meaningful purpose, you are just in that moment of pleasure, which is not as meaningful as suffering for a higher purpose. Also, if you take too much leisure time, this can manifest in meaningless suffering, when you understand that you are wasting time and procrastinating, which in turn is also life. So from this we can conclude that there are two types of suffering which make up life: meaningless and meaningful suffering. If you base your life on the idea of constant happiness and pleasure, you might find yourself, ironically, in meaningless pain, as life is more often than not hard and full of obstacles, and moments of joy are not as frequent as to make sense for this philosophy to be a productive way of being. Of course, I am talking here about the happiness that is understood and followed by the average person. To achieve a state of fulfillment, and it's usually in a form of bodily pleasures in the present moment, or a hope that if you achieve this and this, then it will give you a permanent state of fulfillment in the future. Well, this state is unrealistic, as most days you wake up not motivated or happy, and using substances to make yourself happy usually just provides a negative consequence of sacrificing the future for the present. Therefore, if you always think that you should be happy in order to act, you will always find excuses and ways to not do the things you want, as you are not happy, and the never-ending search of happiness will lead you to the realization that life is suffering. Even if you place your happiness in the future and suffer in the moment, when that anticipated time of happiness to be comes, it's short-lived and in turn can make you feel sad that you can't grasp that feeling long-term. This can lead a person to come to the conclusion that life is meaningless, to arrive at the philosophy of nihilism. If any of you have experienced nihilism, you know that it is a horrible way to live, and even people that are in the state of nihilism crave to escape it. There is a way to escape it, by accepting that life is suffering but not meaningless, and that meaning can be found in that suffering. What is the meaning of life is probably the most important philosophical question. So if we accept that life is pain and that the biggest achievements happen when you don't want to do it but make yourself do it, then we can start to realize the true meaningful purpose. Purpose could be the aforementioned state of happiness, but as happiness is more understood by being in the state that is free of suffering because of the consumption of bodily pleasures, is this a meaningful purpose? It's not. When you begin to work towards your goal every day, and when an obstacle appears in your way which makes it uncomfortable for you to exist and to work, but you overcome it, that's when you transcend suffering by accepting that it's just life and you shouldn't expect to feel motivated all the time, and as that is not realistic long term. This meaning releases you from the shackles of constantly wanting to feel good in order to work towards your goals, and makes you stronger as you fight against the feeling of resistance in the present, but you know that this suffering will be minimized in the future because you become stronger. Of course, you can only arrive at this meaning for existence when the purpose of your life is to become better, and this becoming better can be many things that are very individual for people. Maybe you have a goal to be at the top of your selected area of work, and by suffering towards it, because you won't become the best at what you do without a lot of hard work, gives you a meaning in your everyday life to endure the pain that comes with striving for the goal. This is why the idea that life is suffering can be very beneficial towards your productivity. I already mentioned how we do not wake up motivated or happy every day, and if you are on the notion that to live is to be happy, then you are not going to get things done properly, as you will always try to find that one fix which will put you in the right state of mind to begin work. So how should we act in situations like this? By voluntary suffering, and in other words, using discipline. This is how the idea that life is suffering can help you become more productive and get things done, as no matter how you feel at any given moment, realizing that you should not feel any other way and that this pain can only be minimized by overcoming the obstacle of resistance, then you can stop procrastinating and start doing your work. In this way, you train your discipline, as discipline is pretty much your tolerance to suffering. The more you train your discipline, the easier it becomes to tolerate pain. If you want to start building your discipline, I would recommend trying out cold showers every morning. This practice, although quite uncomfortable, is pretty accessible and doesn't take up much time, but can teach you many valuable lessons about suffering. When you get out of your warm bed in the morning and step into the shower with the thought that it's not going to be as pleasant as having a warm shower, then your feeling of resistance comes up, and you might even start to make excuses of why you might get sick or you can't start tomorrow, but it's the pain you should focus on and just get in there without trying to feel any other way. If you breathe slowly and just suffer through this, when you step out of the shower and dry yourself up, I'll guarantee you will feel amazing and not cold at all. You'll then realize that this was worth it, and that is what meaningful suffering is all about. You sacrifice the short-term pleasure of the present moment, in this case a hot shower, for a more meaningful reward, the many health benefits of a cold shower. Life is unpredictable and the storm of pain can hit you at any moment, so by cultivating discipline, aka your tolerance to suffering, you can train your mind and body to be prepared for anything. Although the aim of happiness as one's life goal is clearly impossible to achieve long term, it's possible to become happy at any moment, and it may actually be far easier than you think. Let me introduce you to Epicurus, an ancient Greek philosopher who believed that the goal of life is happiness. This might seem to contradict the idea that life is suffering, but attainment of happiness in Epicurus' philosophy wasn't that you should indulge in constant pleasure and possess many material stuff, like happiness is understood by the modern human. According to Epicurus, we are all chasing pleasures, even if we have to experience pain along the way towards the path of happiness. This means that Epicurus would have believed that we are chasing that meaningful goal behind the idea that life is suffering in order to gain pleasure from achieving that goal. Again, the idea that life is suffering, in my opinion, is that you more often than not have to overcome resistance in order to fulfill a long-term purpose, but that leisure time is not life, although still important in order to sustain yourself. You can't be working all the time, as you will burn out and damage your mental health, as there is a limit to how much you can suffer, so you have to have some leisure time in order to balance things out. This is where Epicurus and his philosophy of happiness fits in. Epicurus believed that we do not need divine joyful experiences in order to be happy. He separated pleasures into two categories: moving pleasures and static pleasures. In the former case, pleasures which are in the present moment do not result in long-term happiness. If you eat food that is full of sugar, you might enjoy the taste of it and be satiated for a while, but more often this type of indulgence results in craving even more sugary food, and with time you can become unhealthy by becoming fat. Static pleasures, on the other hand, are pleasures which are attained as a way of sacrificing the present for the future and are the superior pleasures. Instead of eating that sugary food, you choose to eat something healthy and nutritious, although the process of eating that food will not be as pleasurable as eating the not-healthy food. The result will be better. You will be satiated as you would be with eating junk food, but you won't crave as much food and you will be healthier. This boils down to essentially reforming the idea of happiness to wanting and being satisfied by less. That's why I believe that any leisure time before you continue to suffer for a goal can be used as a way to experience happiness. Happiness should be understood as the elevation of suffering, but that this state cannot be attained all the time. So when you sit down to watch your favorite TV show or read a book just for pleasure, then you are happy. Of course, it's possible to only feel this way when you learn to be satisfied with less, which can require some pain to reach. But if you reach this state, then you can become more grateful of small pleasures in life and minimize your suffering by balancing this leisure and living time by making pain more worth it. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it and found it informative, please leave a like, as that will show me that you want more of this philosophical type content, and don't forget to subscribe for more weekly self-improvement content. Also, you can follow me on Instagram for more improvement content, and if you want to support this channel, you can do that by donating on my Patreon or PayPal, and all the links to everything are going to be in the description down below. Thank you again for watching this video, and stay on your journey.